So yeah.
No, that's really good. That's good. And I think it's coming up to 8 o'clock, so we'll just get everything started now. And so, hello everyone. Welcome. Belated Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you for joining us on another webinar series of the Tale of Two Dentists by myself, Jazz Gill, and Grant McCarry. Today we are really honored to have Tiff with us, Tiff Qureshi. I'm sure you all have heard of him. He's an amazing guy. I've known him for some time, and just wanted to give a little bit of background. He qualified from King's College back in 1992. King's is a wonderful place. I went there as well. He's the past president of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, clinical director of IAS Academy, an international faculty that provides mentored education for general dentists on a pathway from appropriate, simple to comprehensive ortho. He's also got a special interest in simple orthodontics and truly minimally invasive dentistry. He's committed his life work to empowering dentists to provide important alternative techniques to offer a wide variety of treatments to many more patients and not violating the fundamental precepts of ortho. Tiff also pioneered the concepts of progressive smile design through alignment bleaching, bonding, and is also an experienced teacher in the DAL concept to assist in minimally invasive patient-centered dentistry. Tiff now lectures nationally and internationally and has had many articles published on all of these subjects. And I'd like to sort of add to that. I mean, I've been on all of the IAS courses, right from the Clear Smile aligners to lingual to IAS advanced. It's absolutely fantastic. Would highly recommend it for people who have that interest. Welcome Tiff to this webinar.
Thanks for having me, guys. And it's been fascinating watching your journey as well and what you guys have been doing. I've been super impressed with the kind of entrepreneurism of what you're doing and watching it, thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing actually. So I mean, I've known you from points when you neither of you were speakers at all, to the point now where you're doing this. So it's actually a really great thing to watch. Definitely.
Do you know what? It's over to me.
Over to you, Grant. Over to you.
Tiff, I saw you when you started doing your Inman training or your Inman courses. And the one thing I remember was the powerful beginnings to the course. I mean, I think it was you had one of your kids singing a Smile song. Now I won't forget this. It was a very I can't remember what song you had, but I think one of your children were good. It was one of your children musical because you had them singing.
Yeah, I seem to remember that now. What was that?
Well, do you know what? It never left me. And the other thing about something that never left me about back in the day when you started lecturing was how you worked the room. Now you managed to go into the room after your course, and you managed to speak to everybody and make everyone feel good and make people feel welcome. How on earth do you manage to do that? I mean, I struggle when there's 50 people in the room. How do you manage to do this?
I think it's probably from never expecting to teach, from never ever sort of having a plan to do it. I stumbled into the whole thing, and actually because I enjoy the days so much, I think I'm always really grateful for anyone, even if they're skeptical, even if they're, they think they're not going to enjoy it or whatever. I'm always glad that people have come and that they paid their money and they've turned up. So, and I do also think that I always seem to remember the best courses that I ever went on were ones where you actually kind of got to speak to the speaker.
Yes.
You could go on courses and someone would come out and lecture and then they just bugger off into another room and you never see it again, and it's a bit aloof. So I think people kind of, and I'm sure you guys are doing the same thing. You know very well that when you put your hand out, you shake someone's hand, you talk to them, they're probably more likely to listen, more likely to be engaged. So yeah, that's why I did it basically.
But that's a good point. So you do. So that will be your secret then. So you have that ability to make someone feel as though you're grateful for them coming to listen to you, and that's true. And that is the feeling you I think you gave me. And that must have been when were you doing the Inman courses?
They probably started about I think about 2008 or 7 or 8. So it's about 12 years ago.
I'm showing the age.
Yeah, your age, Grant.
I think we're all a little grayer. I'm so when you started those Inman courses, when I call it as a bit rude, so forgive me if no one likes swearing, but I call them the shit the bed moments. When was your shit the bed moment with A, B, and B that you struck on something that would change dentistry? And you have Tiff, you have changed dentistry for a huge amount globally. When did you think, right, I've got something here, and how did you come about knowing that?
I think probably because I was so heavily involved in the BACD at the time. I wasn't president at that point. I was kind of going through the whole kind of, vice president, president, all that sort of stuff you ended up doing. And then I put this sort of immunoaligner thing on the table in front of everybody, and they were like, "Oh, wow, that's really interesting." And then it sort of the initial lecturing started off as a bit of a hobby, but then really getting courses going. That came because you probably remember Tim Bradscott-Smith. Remember Tim?
Yes.
And also, obviously, still James Russell, and those two guys pretty much sort of dragged me onto the stage and said, listen, I actually did a study club for them. Believe it or not, we used to do this 3-person study club. It was a bit sad, really, just 3 of us. And one would lecture on one thing, one would lecture on the other, and then so Tim did. I think James might have done photography. Tim did TMJ or face bows, and then I just did immunoaligner. And I did immunoaligner, and literally their jaws were like on the floor. And they said, "Show us how to do this." So I showed them how to do it. 3 or 4 months later, they were like, "Listen, we need to run a course on this." So that's how it started. And I think the other thing is purely in practice. A lot of patients were coming into me wanting veneers, composite veneers, porcelain veneers, and all that sort of stuff. They wanted that typical smile design look that we were all, as cosmetic dentists, we're all programmed to think you've got to look like this. And I would straighten someone's teeth and whiten them a little bit. And that same person said, "I don't want that anymore. Just fix the edges, or I'm done." And that suddenly made me realize that cosmetic dentistry wasn't quite what I thought it was, in the sense that actually it should be much more patient-led than us telling people how their teeth should look. So those moments where, over a few years, there were 200 patients who came to me wanting 8 to 10 veneers, all changed their mind, every single one. So it's pretty strong. For me, it was pretty strong evidence. So it was really those sorts of things that changed it.
So was your A, B, and B? It wasn't okay, I'm not doing that now, and I've got A, B, and B now. It was a development from the Inman through to.
Yeah, it was. I used Inman at the beginning because there were patients who didn't want, they couldn't afford veneers. I'm in Sidcup in Kent. I had lots of opportunities to work in the West End, but I never did. I just carried on working in Sidcup in the same practice the whole time. And then Sidcup is not an affluent area, but you still got people that want those things. So it kind of got me, thinking about different ways. And I was messing around with Z springs and little expanding devices and all sorts of stuff back at 2000, 2001 at the same time of doing tons of veneers. And I then stumbled across immunoaligner in an article in AACD journal, and that was really where I thought, you know what, I could really use this a lot more than some of those other things. And a lot of patients who actually wanted veneers. There were 15 patients in particular who I'd sort of planned over the next 6 months to do veneers on, or several months to do veneers on. And each one of them, I went back to them and said, "Listen, I can actually move your teeth instead. Would you?" And some of these people had refused to go to the orthodontist, and some of them had already been to the orthodontist and come back and said, "I'm not having that done." And every single one of those patients said, "Yes, I'll have that done." And that's what made me realize that somewhere there's a middle ground. Somewhere there's this limited objective ground that if you tell patients what you're doing and what you're not doing, it's okay to do it. And so it was that sort of process, really. And of course, there was a lot of people firing stuff at you at the time. The kind of, there was quite a lot of anger, you shouldn't be doing ortho and blah, 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 blah. But still, I think by just saying, look, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm not doing, it always seemed okay. But yeah.
So you went to bed with £100,000 worth of treatment plans, waking up with about £5,000 because you were going to do Inman on them all.
Well, yeah, well, it wasn't so little because, the interesting thing is you probably charged, we talk money, we're probably charging a third less, I would say, because you're still doing bleaching and bonding.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was I wasn't spending effectively 2 whole days doing the treatment, which it usually is for me for veneers. I spend a lot of time with them. And I wasn't then also paying a £2,500 lab bill. So, and then the other thing was, having done veneers for, a few years, I was already seeing the issues that no one ever talks about. This whole concept of the replacement event. You go to a restorative or cosmetic dentistry course on veneers, they don't really talk a lot about the replacement event, as in what happens when you have to do it again. Because that's really important, because I found there's three really important factors that no one really considers. Number one, will the patient be able to afford it again? Which, do we really think about that? And is it the right time for them? Number two, can they be bothered? When veneers fail, some patients, I've got patients like who've needed their veneers replacing 5 or 10 years ago and just can't be bothered. Number three, when veneers and things fail, they don't all drop off in one go. What actually happens is one goes, another one goes, and it's unlikely the patient's going to say to you, "Yeah, drill them all off and start again." They usually want you to match them, and you guys know very well that matching single unit veneers against 10 to 15-year-old ones is an absolute bastard to do. Really difficult. Probably harder than matching a single central. No one ever talks about that. So it was those things that sort of made me realize that, it'd be better just not getting into this, not raising the risk factors, which we were just doing all the time. And I think, I just wanted to be safe, and I kept seeing people around me getting into trouble, and, GDC case and this and that. And I just thought, I don't want any of that. I just want it safe, want a safe approach.
Do you remember your first Inman?
I do, actually. So there's a first patient who was a paying patient, and she came in and saw me actually the other day. Beautiful girl, and she's her. And the amazing thing about her is, because she's had her teeth done and she wears a retainer, and her teeth, when you look at them 16 years later, just don't look any different, and that's really great to see. But actually, the first patient was actually my nurse and receptionist, Helen. So
I thought you were going to say your mother-in-law.
No.
There's always a nurse or the partner.
No. Well, actually, funny enough, I'm actually treating my partner now. She's having aligners done. So yeah, I'm treating her a bit finally. So
I want to go back to when you mentioned at that time, but you had this thing. Obviously, you were doing Inman for some time, and you're moving teeth. We're still having that problem now with orthodontists and saying, like, this is our area. But at that time, it must have been really difficult. So the problems you must have faced then, how was that?
It was difficult to begin with. I mean, the other thing that happened was, there was an article in the Daily Mail. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it was about Inman aligners. And I remember getting interviewed by them, and I just told them what it did. The next thing I know, they had like a center page spread, a 6-week wonder brace will get rid of all braces. I was like, I read it. Oh my god! I'm just going to get killed here. And then the next thing that happened, actually, then I got quite quickly an invitation from the British Orthodontic Society to go and lecture in front of them.
Wow!
And that was actually quite early on in my lecturing career. So very stupidly, I sort of accepted it. Although actually, funny enough, I was quite naive because I didn't really realise. And then I kind of got a lecture ready. I presented it. And do you know what? I didn't get a single heckle. No one asked me a single difficult question. And I think partly it was because everyone just saw me treating simple 3-3 cases. And I kept saying, if it's any more than that, orthodontist treats it. If it's any more than that, orthodontist treats it. As simple as that. And so, yeah, that's the first and the last time I've ever lectured in front of them. But literally not one heckle and not one difficult question. So
have you had many heckles and difficult questions since that lecture by orthodontist?
No, actually never, interestingly. And I'm not joking, never. I've lectured in front of thousands and thousands of dentists all around the world. And actually there's been many orthodontists that have come to our courses. So most, or particularly the ortho restorative course, we normally have 2 or 3 orthodontists on those courses, because it's quite interesting, because a lot of them, they want to learn how to do edge bonding and whitening and all that sort of thing as well.
Well, my orthodontist is coming on your course to learn about edge bonding.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Why would you give that work away if you can do it yourself, So anyway, subsequently, we've had lots. So I'm always used to there being some orthodontists there, and genuinely, never. You get the odd person on Facebook and whatever, and Style Italiano or whatever, but you shouldn't be doing this, blah blah blah. But I think part of the reason now is the argument has sort of switched, where what we can clearly show is that general dentists who don't do ortho, it's actually more damaging for patients. Do you know what I mean? What I'm saying here is that not understanding ortho means you're probably more likely to end up doing, in my opinion, more unnecessary anterior work. You know, you don't, if you don't do ortho, I mean, how do you control an envelope of function, a constricting envelope?
Yeah.
You know, the common argument I say to many dentists, if your treatment for my repeatedly chipping front tooth that's chipping because there's a constricted envelope is a veneer or a crown, I'm walking out the door. Okay, it's as simple as that. And I think that there are millions of people right now who end up with veneers or crowns on their front teeth because their dentist doesn't understand that there's actually an underlying ortho-functional problem going on.
Do you look back at some of your work when you started and think, oh my God?
Yeah, absolutely.
Every dentist has done that. It's not just us three.
Yeah, we're not being interviewed here.
No, absolutely. And you know
Put the
what?
pressure on Tiff. Yeah, that's a good
Exactly.
point.
Let's give him a hard time. A little bit of a hard time, just a bit.
I actually like showing it because I think showing it is a great way of teaching people, and you know, it's like, and funny, I even show patients in checkups when I've done something I'm not happy with, and that's not that common, but because we're doing like an intraoral camera checkup every time. If a composite filling looks naff 3 years later, the patient's going to see it, and I can't hide it because they're used to me showing them everything every 6 months. And occasionally it will appear on the screen and there'll be a stain or a leak, and I say to the patient, not happy with that, I'm going to change that. And you know what, that might cost me 300 quid or whatever it will cost me for that appointment, but a patient that sees you do that has no doubt that you're looking after their best interests. You know what I mean? You're not having to fight for patients. You know, you've got their friends coming in to see you because they think, you know, this is the dentist that shows me everything, and just I trust him implicitly.
That is such a great approach. That's fantastic. I wanted to ask you, Tiff, about the intraoral camera checkup that you do, because I saw your post as well, and you said that's the best piece of toolkit that you have. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that, that'd be really useful, I think.
What's the process you go through an examination?
Yeah, I mean, I go through all the usual stuff. So I look around the patient's mouth. I do I do oral screen, perio, TMJ. I do some functional stuff. Once I've done all that, I then quickly pull out the intraoral camera on a stick, and I'm like bang, 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 and literally in less than a minute, and I just say yes. My nurse clicks the button, and in less than a minute, I've got a brand new dental chart, and that's what I call it, a dental chart. The other thing that I do is, if you get quite handy with it, you know, you pop the perio probe in, take your picture, take the perio probe out, take a picture, blood, and the patient can see it. You know, so if I'm concerned about perio or pocket deepening, I always show the patient. Now, the reason I do that is I know that when I use the intraoral camera images, the patients are fixated on that screen, and they also start, and by recording the images, obviously from 6 months ago, 3 years ago, in fact, we've got images going back 16 years now. Patients can start to see what's happening with their teeth.
Yeah.
And you know, this came out recently because I'm sort of quite frustrated by actually the way I think dentists are taught at an early stage, and I think that actually intraoral cameras, put aside SLR, put aside, you know, all these composite skills, put aside aligners and all that sort of stuff. Intraoral cameras are actually the most important tool in dentistry that we never really understood were that important. And what I would say is that the reason I bought an intraoral camera was because 23 years ago, when I was an NHS dentist, you know, and in the same practice, by the way, I used to hate that feeling that patients would, you know, you occasionally got a patient, and when you had to do you needed to do a filling, or the patient had a, you know, gum pocket or something, you said to the patient, like, you need a filling or you need a crown, and you get the odd patient that will look up to you and say, oh, is that so you can buy a Porsche or something like that? And you know, you can kind of laugh about it, but it's actually incredibly hurtful. And I found it to the point, I got to the point where I was, you know, generally, I'll be open with you, I was quite depressed. I was seriously depressed about dentistry. I didn't like it. Didn't like going into work every day. I didn't like aggressive patients who thought, you know, particularly on the NHS, they sort of felt they owned you. They felt they paid their national insurance, so you had to do what they wanted. So we bought a camera, and it was, you know, very old, one of the first cameras that came on the market. And I tell you something, since that day, I have never had a patient ever doubt anything I've said, ever. And you think, what is the biggest problem in dentistry? What's the problem? Ask the BDA, ask all these people. What's the biggest problem between dentists and patients? Lack of trust. That's the solution. It is absolutely a solution. It's just that we don't actually use them correctly.
So how long do you take over a checkup? What's your checkup time? Normal standard checkup, how much would you charge a patient for that time? Sorry, they are direct questions. I hope you don't mind.
Absolutely perfect question. I mean, I have between 20 and 30 minutes booked. Just depends what time of day it is. And for me, it's a loss leader. I mean, we don't charge a massive amount for a checkup. It's, 50 odd quid or something. So it's 30 minutes. If it's 30 minutes and you make £100 an hour, that's not covering my costs. It doesn't matter. I'm not too worried about that because what happens is these patients always end up having treatment, and they have it because they want it, because they've seen something and they understand what's going on with their teeth. Yeah, 20 minutes sometimes. But the point being is that 20-minute appointment is full of this. We don't talk about politics, Brexit, COVID, any of that. Okay, we talked a bit about COVID or whatever, but we don't talk about their holidays or their dog. It's literally, they come in, we look at their teeth, we look at the images, we talk about what we see. I then start helping them understand how their function is affecting what they see, and we can talk about that in a bit. And then these patients go away actually thinking, aware that this tooth's a bit more worn than it should be. They're aware that actually this upper central is drifting inwards and knocking their lower, and the lower one in a couple of years could be a bit more worn and a bit more discolored. But they go away. And what I say to them is, don't panic. What I never do is say, you've got to do it, you've got to fix it, you've got to fix it. I say to them, this is an ongoing situation. We can look at it again in 6 months. And so most patients I treat for big treatment plans are actually people that I've known for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, who said to me, Tiff, that thing you were talking about, my tooth knocking, I think I can feel that a bit more. Do you think we could sort that out now? Bang, off we go. That's how I do it.
That sounds.
We've got a comment here.
And I was going to go through the comments.
You say, Jazz, go for it. You say it, mate.
Well, Drew remembers the actual Daily Mail article he just said. Phil has said Tiff for Prime Minister. So I think you might start needing to talk about Brexit and a little bit more.
The thing is,
one thing I know that it's going to, which is I'm thinking about, when you talked about taking the photos, do you take one photo of each tooth?
Yeah, pretty much. So the intraoral camera images. So obviously I still have an SLR, by the way, and I usually take once a year, I'll take an occlusal of all the teeth and a couple of front-on views and a couple of side, but not a full set of 16 views with the SLR. But the intraoral camera, I take one picture of each tooth. If the tooth's got a crack on the side, I might go around the side. And then obviously, if I'm concerned about perio, I'll probably take a couple of shots in pockets and probe in and probe out. That's really powerful, so powerful that is. And also critically, you always show a patient the probe going into a healthy area, and you show them that, so they can see the depth change. And then, that takes a couple of seconds. You get used to doing it. And then the patients just say, yeah, and you say you need to see the hygienist, bang, they're in. You know what I mean? So that's what we do. There's never any doubt. Most of the time, you're telling patients you don't need to do that. You don't need to do it. They see like a stained amalgam, or they see a slight leak or something, or a little, and they're saying, oh, can we fix it? We fix it. And most of the time I'm saying, no, actually, you don't need to. Let's just keep an eye on it and blah, 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 blah.
The thing is, I got a feeling a lot of people are going to be thinking, what about scanners? Where do they fit in? Because
great question. I've got a scanner. I mean, we've had this point, most of this year, we've had 2 scanners in the building. We're probably about to buy another one soon. Scanners are fantastic, and don't get me wrong, you need a scanner. And I would say, if you're an associate and your boss hasn't got one, just buy one yourself. But scanners are amazing, and I think they're great for patient monitoring of changes as well as impression taking and all the rest of it. But I'll tell you what, even with my Trios, which takes an amazing picture, it takes longer to scan the patient for a start. It doesn't matter how fast the scan is. And the second thing that I've noticed, having shown patients scans and shown patients photographs, and I know my patients really well, they all feel that the scan just looks like CGI. It doesn't look real.
Totally agree.
It doesn't look real. So a scanner is an essential tool, no doubt about it. If I lost it, I'd be crying without it. But for me, as a functioning dentist, to practice the way I practice, the intraoral camera is actually the most important part. And the crazy thing is people, that's why I put the post up, because I haven't got a clue what's out there, because I see so little development in the technology that I think that a lot of companies kind of gave up on it. That's sort of why I've been trying to find out, and I'm trying to sort of know who and what to recommend. Because a piece of software I've got is, it's about 15, 16 years old, and I'm not entirely sure if you can actually buy it, but I'm in the process of trying to find out. So. Do
you obviously have associates working for you, do you, Tiff?
Yeah, I do.
Do you expect the same standards of care that you provide, and the photographing and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I do now, and you know we've had a lot of associates over the years. We've had very good associates. You know, you get the odd ones that they're very good and they go off and set their own practice up, which is a bit gutting, but that's going to happen. But they're very good. But now I think we're at the stage where we've got a couple who really are really super tuned in, and one of them in particular is my nephew. So makes it a bit easier. So his name is Haroon Latif, and he's a wonderful guy. And he's actually, you know, he's so talented with composite and bonding and all this sort of stuff. He's just literally doing this every day. I mean, he's younger, better looking than me, got big muscles, so probably gets all the patience as well. But
Yeah.
but you know, it's worth following him on Instagram if anyone's, you know, having a look. Just look at his work. And the great thing is, you know, he's done all of this. You know, he came on my course, learned my edge bonding method. I mean, he does it better than me now, quite frankly, and that's kind of what I want people to be able to do. And the other guy, John, who's also a lovely guy, he's an American guy who just fits in so well. So we've got these two who just, you know, they bounce off each other, and we're just at the moment, you know, in a really good place. And I'll be honest with you, for the first time in probably 15 years of clinical practice, I'm actually happy as an owner. It's quite a statement.
Wow, that's a good
I've not been satisfied as an owner. I've been partly because all the IAS stuff has pulled me the other direction. Whereas now I'm actually thinking, you know, this is good. You know, so, you know, although I love the dentistry, I love the results. I can't say I've enjoyed owning a practice. So
why is it that all these younger dentists have these big muscles now? We're slacking, aren't we? I think somewhere there.
I know. It is what it is. But
so you mentioned the IAS and that side of it. I want to sort of bring that onto the IAS lab and talk a little bit about your lab and your teaching facility and how you're involved with that.
Well, we you know, lab wise, we kind of got involved with a lab a few years ago, and really it was because it becomes much easier to kind of control the quality. And the best thing about it is actually learning from what then comes back when issues start to occur. Then we are right at the coalface speaking to technicians and looking at scans and seeing what the classic mistakes people make, which actually makes the teaching a lot better. And the lab actually now we've literally just moved to a new facility down the road. It's near next to Mercedes-Benz World, wherever it is down in Surrey. And it's a fantastic new building. I mean, it's just, you know, I was actually blown away when I went to see it. But what we've also decided to do is we're building a teaching facility above, a really big room, going to be all kitted out, 4K projector, all the stuff. We want to try and run most of our London stuff from there. Obviously, we'll still run courses in Manchester and all the rest of it, but because we're sort of expanding a little bit of our portfolio of courses, it'll be great to have that as a central location. And even though we've got a lab, you know, we still have a very open source approach. So I have a lab, our lab makes aligners, but I still use all sorts of different aligners, you know, and I teach different aligner systems, and it's not really a conflict, because with our lab, it can do a certain amount, it can take a certain amount of work on, but it's never going to be competing with ClearCorrect, Invisalign, SureSmile, or any of those companies. It's just going to do, you know, it's going to do little bits of work for dentists, retainers, you know, small aligner cases, blah, 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 fixed cases. And we want that lab there to learn from it, to actually be able to really analyze work. That was my main reason for it, actually, and that's
what's the classic mistakes dentists make?
Very typically, one of the first things is they'll take a scan without really assessing the patients properly, and they'll just send the work off, and then when the scan comes back, or the setup comes back, they don't, as you guys well know because you've taken Ross's course, they don't really relate what they see on the scan to the patient's soft tissues and facial features. Okay, so that's number one. Actual little technical things, very, very typically, is attachment placement. That is one of the biggest errors, and not just, you know, and I'll tell you something, it's big across the board. I mean, we've got people on our IAS forums who've been doing, you know, Invisalign or ClearCorrect, whatever, for years, making the same mistake with attachments. And what that one typical thing is, people tend to use attachments and they use flowable. Which is a big mistake. And the second thing is they place all their attachments in one go, which is another big mistake, because what tends to happen when you do that is you end up, particularly when you look at scans, you can see it. You end up with some attachments that digitally represent the attachment perfectly, and some that look like fat splats. And that's because what effectively happens is you get too much composite and the tray's not seating. So one thing that we sort of teach is very sort of particular way of placing attachments to make sure that when they are seated, they are digitally absolutely exactly how they're meant to be on your ClearCorrect or CleanCheck setup. And if that's not correct, it's amazing how many cases go off track and you see the attachment shape is incorrect, time and time again. The other thing, flowable. I mean, one reason why I don't use flowable is that, well, say for example, you've got a 20 aligner case and the canine starts rotating at aligner 12. The problem is by the time you get to aligner 12 and the aligners coming in and out every day, the sharp edge of that attachment's probably worn away. You see what I mean? So that's why I always use like a hybrid or nano hybrid, because I want that attachment to look absolutely pin perfect at aligner 13. And that again, you're only going to see that if you really analyze your setup, because a lot of people, they'll press a button and think, oh, okay, off I go, follow the instructions, but they're not necessarily fully aware of what aligner is doing what at each stage. So those are the sorts of things we see. IPR is another classic one, obviously, and also lack of tooth shaping. People just only do IPR. They don't do this PPR thing that you guys know about and the tooth shaping thing. Yeah, those sorts of things really. And honestly, we've learned that from the lab. It really has been, a privilege to be able to sort of see that and help people sort of correct those issues.
Wow, fantastic. We've been asked another question. Which intraoral camera do you use and how much does it cost? Do you recommend using them straight from DFT?
Well, I'll answer the last question first. And the answer to that is yes, I definitely would. I think it's one of the first things you should do. In fact, in my opinion, every dental student should have one, literally from day one. I don't understand why they wouldn't. They should be, and they're not expensive. What camera? This is a difficult question to answer because my camera is 16 years old, 15 years old, and it is what they call a Schick camera with a K on the end. I can't say I'd recommend that now because I don't know what the equivalent is, and I'm sure the camera I've got isn't made anymore. I know that Dentsply Sirona, who own the brand, they're in contact with me. They saw my message and they're going to try and show me what they've got now. It's the cameras are the cheap parts in reality and should be, because the technology is not difficult. And I'm sure, you can get a good camera off Amazon for 120, 130 quid. The problem is the software. And this is where I've had a real frustration because the software that I've seen, it's really basic. Okay. But what I really want is for my images to be displayed like periapicals. That's what I want. I want it so I know that's the upper left 8, upper left 6. And so the images are displayed. What I don't want is a whole load of stacking images, which are meaningless crap, basically, aren't they? Just meaningless crap. And you don't know what that was 6 months ago. Yeah. So the software I've got, which is actually Dentsply Sirona, but a very old version called DCR or CDR DICOM. Again, I would not be able to tell you where to get it, but that's who made it back in the time. That's an amazing piece of software. The difficulty is, I think, that a lot of the companies that were selling that software had the wrong target market. They were aiming for just to sell it to a few very high-end private dentists, and they probably did, perhaps, but it's a completely wasted opportunity. I think every single dentist would use that if someone came up with the right piece of software. So that's why I'm trying to do some research to be able to tell people, go and buy this, go and buy that. And at the moment, I don't know, but I'm looking. So.
And what do you think of the different IPR systems? I know that people will be wondering. I know you've got the slow handpiece ones, and you've got the strips. What's your, or is it a mixture of it all? What's your advice about IPR?
It's a mixture. I mean, I still open with the long strips. Okay, I only open with those. Then I usually make a bit more space with quick strips, which are like little plasticky things. But I quite like those because they've got a kind of curved bit, so you can't really. It's less easy to cut the gum. But I'm also using some, what are they called again? Reciprocating, what do they call them again? Where they vibrate? Can't think of the word. Brain's gone. But the one that vibrates like that.
Another one you mean, yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't remember the name. I'm using those with a variety of different types. So, for example, Dentsply Sirona sent me with a Sure Smart kit. I'm trying theirs out. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Spacefile. That's really nice, actually. Spacefile is really good. There's lots of those different various systems. I mean, NSK do a nice one with dentator strips as well. I think they're all really good. I think generally, for most general dentists, I think hand strips and then also a sort of vibrating strip is probably quite a good thing. I wouldn't jump into using high speeds or anything like that. I think you do that once you're you're doing like the advanced level style courses really. So yeah, most of the time I'm using hand strips, I would say, but occasionally with the vibrating one. And I also actually use just to widen out spaces. I use Softflex discs. Once I've got enough space, I just drop a Softflex string and just wiggle it from left to right a little bit, basically. But the key, as you guys know, is the key, the IPR guide, the IPR key. It's using those gauges. If you don't use those gauges, you won't make enough space. You won't.
No. I remember Ross telling me that as well many times.
Yeah.
I mean, who are the people involved now? Going back to IAS now as the firm. So I've got a few questions with regard to the setup. Who are the members of that?
Okay. Well, so owners or kind of direct.
Whoever. Well, where's your structure of the bosses, as it were?
Okay. Well, so basically, there's obviously myself. There is Ross as well. Ross came on board about 7 or 8 years ago, I think, and obviously there was Anoop, and now obviously that's Neera. Neera is, I have to say, she's been really involved a lot, which has been fantastic having her involved in that. And there's also another sort of 2 main people who don't get quite so much publicity, but they're sort of out there. But there's Prav, so Prav Solanki.
Is Prav still with us? Because he almost starved himself to death.
He's on holiday, isn't he?
What did you do that for?
I know and trust Prav so much, but I cannot believe he cannot eat something for 21 days. But I just don't know how he does it. He's mad. But anyway, yeah, he is still with us, actually. Yeah, he is. I have to say, I've also got to thank Prav, because he's helped me kind of lose weight in quite a healthy way over the last 2 or 3 years, which is a bit of advice. So there's Prav, who's, he's been a partner and, been a good friend for years. And there's also a chap named Darren Mitchell, who he actually owned the lab that we sort of amalgamated into and took over. And he's been a kind of revelation for us, really. He's really got us organized behind the scenes where we didn't really have that organization before. He's the one that does all the kind of deals with people behind the scenes. So there's them. And then also there's a couple of other little people who are kind of involved at a slightly smaller level, but they're still involved. One is Andy Wallace, who you guys know. Yeah. And there's other people kind of becoming involved. People like Daz Singh and Asif Chatu as well. So, they're
a great team.
It's a good team, yeah. It's a good team, and
I love Ross. I think he's absolutely. I recently had a bit of a squeeze from the GDC, and the help he's given me, and he doesn't need to do that. And it's been brilliant. And I'm saying this now about IAS, that because I did the journey that I did, albeit I went all the way through to Ross Hobbs. I've done your course, obviously, in Montreal Liners, and because I went through all the way to the end, it was faultless. My notes, the treatments, the treatment planning, and there's absolutely no way that would have been faultless if I hadn't gone on that total journey and had the support even afterwards. Even after I could pick up the phone to Ross and he'd go, look, Grant, do this, and this, say this, let me have faultless. I mean, the company itself. And that makes you feel it's not just about the money, and I've had huge support in a really stressful time as well, So that massive thank you to you probably didn't know about this, but massive thank you to the people who were with you, who were supporting as well.
I echo all of that. So I'm exactly the same. It's been absolutely faultless. Every single aspect of all of the courses, even the lingual course as well, the advanced course, it's been really amazing. Because anyone out there thinking of taking their author journey a little bit further, this is ideal. And that's coming from a 6-month smart speaker. It really is faultless without a shadow of a doubt. So fantastic. Well done there for that, Tiff.
It's good. It's nice to hear you say that. I mean, our objective. I mean, funny enough, when Ross came on board, because I actually got to know Ross through an online argument on GDP UK. So we were having a row with each other basically. And
why am I not surprised?
Why you're not surprised? and what I did was, rather than go down the usual keyboard warrior route, I said to him, Ross, just come on my course. Let's stop arguing. Come on the course. And he came on the course, and then actually within about 2 years, he was the director. So it's funny kind of how things turned out. And of course, that was almost around about the same time that Anoop came on board. And Anoop really was kind of pushing to trying to get Ross involved as well. I wanted Ross to come on as well, but Anoop could see that it really would complete what we were trying to do. So yeah, it has been. But our kind of initial ethos has always been, and that went way back to Tim and James, was that we were always trying to just do the kind of right thing. And you might think, it sounds a bit pious sometimes. Oh yeah, you're feeling good about what you're doing. And the bottom line is, if you're being really brutal about it, we probably could have made a lot more money if we hadn't done the right thing. But ultimately, none of us have ever kind of felt that was the right, that we wanted to go in that direction. I think we've always kind of felt that, it's been about sort of standards and also just saying no to people, not letting them do treatments, which you know very well. Some dentists don't like that, and that's actually one reason why some people won't even come on our courses, because they know they're going to get told not to do it. Yeah. But ultimately, our goal is always trying to keep people safe, and then if you do that, then the people will come on the courses, and that's really all we're after. So.
I mean, I think you do have to. For me now, I've done the complete journey though. I mean, I wish I'd done the advanced course first, so then I can see which ones the easier ones were. But fortunately, with a company like yourself, you can say, no, don't do that. But I think if for people who are doing orthodontic courses, I think you need to. I mean, I don't know what's your opinion about that? You need to know what the easy one is before.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely the pathway is very much for beginners. Ross would say, no beginners come on the advanced course. He always says, and funny enough, the first thing you actually should do is photography, but people don't realise that until they start. But ABB is probably the start point, because it's the simplest intro into it, and we're teaching a bit of restorative stuff. So you get that, particularly in the new way it's been done, you get getting that from the very beginning, and then I think after that, then fixed comes quite quickly, and then level 2, this, that, and then the bottom line is, once you're done 5, 10, 15 fixed cases, 20 aligner cases, something like that, then you're probably ready to do Ross's course. But before that, I think it's too much to take on board. I think once you've done a few simple cases, made a few mistakes, I think you'll learn a lot more. That's kind of the way we feel. Yeah,
and Ross seems to have the habit of telling you when something's wrong, doesn't it? Well, that's crap. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was only me.
As I said, it's definitely not a course for people who, Ross says how it is, but I think you learn better from that.
Yeah.
But he does it in a way that you still learn. And I must admit, when Ross actually came on the ortho restorative course for the first time, he sort of has this thing where when we launch a new course, he comes and sits and watches it, which you could imagine is kind of but anyway, so he sits and watches it. But actually, afterwards, I sat down with him and we went through a whole load of lists, and it was really good. He's a really good educator. So I thought I'd planned that course out well, but there were lots of little things that I could see I did better. So yeah, he's been a revelation for us, in fact.
I worked in his practice in York for about 6 months, and so when I was treating patients, he was there next to me, and it's scary. It really is. Having someone like that sitting next to you. So it is scary. But Nick's just mentioned that Nick Simon, the support of IAS, has been amazing. 3 specialist orthodontics I can count on. Munis has mentioned, I can't thank enough to Anoop, TIFF, and IAS for introducing to me and many of my colleagues GDP ortho and completely changing my career ortho. So you've really changed many people's lives. We've got a question here now. I've done the first Inman aligner and the CSA first course. What is the next step? I want to complete the stages.
Well, if they did that, I'd say if they did that on its own and they haven't done the ortho restorative, I would do that next. If you've done that as well with it, because now we do the ABB together, is actually clear aligners, it's clear aligners, Inman, and ortho restorative over 2 days. So I'd say ortho restorative first. After that, I'd probably say CSB is next. Actually, I think that's a good thing. Even though of course everyone's doing aligners, we're all doing more aligners. We all know that. But I think it's super important that people do kind of understand fixed ortho, because one thing that worries me slightly is people are becoming so obsessed by clear aligners, just kind of stopping offering the alternatives. And you get a lot of these people that sort of say, "Oh, I'm a clear aligner only practice," and I say you shouldn't say that. You're kind of asking for trouble, because you're kind of you're almost sort of admitting you're not going to consent the patient fully or give them all the full options. I know you probably
absolutely right. Yeah.
Tim, do me a favour. Don't ever become a dental expert, will you? Because if you saw most people's notes, you'd be able to rip the arse out of it. Don't ever do that. Just use it the way you are.
You'll say not enough photographs. That's what I'll say.
Well, we say that pretty much every day on the forum. Not enough photographs. We often say, you guys have probably seen it. Ross says it. Your photographs are indefensible. When you say that, people think, "Shit, I better go get some photographs."
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's a great word to use because it's quite scary, but it's true. That's the thing. It's true.
So this is a good one. I mean, this is probably a common question you get. So they've done the Clear Smile Aligner course, but everyone tells me to do Invisalign instead. It's the honest opinion.
I think the simple fact is, I would say on half of the people who come on our ABB course where we're teaching, clear aligners, it's because we're teaching in a very generic way. Half of them have done Invisalign already. But with all due respect, they're learning how to do ortho properly. You know what I mean? They're kind of learning how to to think about ortho. And a lot of people, a lot of people on our forums are doing ClearCorrect and Invisalign. We're mentoring them. That's the whole idea of what we're doing. So we're not. I think if you went on one of our courses, you'll actually end up doing Invisalign better. Yes, you'll still need to learn how to pay for your login. You'll learn how to. You need to learn to get. Well, not learning, but you're paying to get on the list or whatever to be a provider. But actually, if you want to really learn how to control the occlusion properly and understand the consequences of what you're doing long term, that's why we are teaching we're actually doing other company subject. We're doing specific courses now for ClearCorrect and SureSmile. We're working with Straumann and we're working with Dentsply Sirona, and they've done that because they've seen what we do, and what they don't want is a learn how to log in course. What they actually want is a proper education course. So that's why they've come to us. But they know that we're also going to tell people you perhaps shouldn't do that case. So So I'd say if you're doing Invisalign, come along. I've
been mentored with Invisalign Reside just now. I've been mentored with Invisalign for all the cases, different braces, and I think you moved away from just the Inman. You do all of them, really, don't you? So
yeah. I mean, I do Invisalign. I've done all the IS courses. I can definitely say your Invisalign will be a lot better if you've done the IS courses, without a doubt.
Yes.
Definitely. So someone here, they've been practicing comprehensive ortho and also Invisalign for a few years now. Can they directly enroll for advanced course with IS?
Yes, you can. But I do think you do need to, Ross has to kind of give the go ahead. So you may have to send a kind of little mini CV portfolio of what you've done and how much experience you've got. And he might, we want people on our courses. Great for us, people pay, but he's not going to take somebody on if he doesn't feel, and he does say no quite a bit, and occasionally does disappoint people, but he just wants to make sure that people are at the right level. And he might say, look, listen, go and do this for a bit and then come next year. And he says that to people sometimes. So if someone's done a lot of comprehensive ortho, it sounds like they've done a lot of fixed, they may be absolutely ready to do it. Definitely.
All right, okay, that's great, Yoga. Fantastic. Munis has said he's booked in for the advanced course next year. He's looking forward to it, so that's good. And you mentioned about the open source approach that you're now teaching for ClearCorrect and SureSmile. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, funny enough, the ClearCorrect thing came about not direct. It was a bit of a weird one actually, because we were sort of talking to them sort of separately, and then at the same time we were talking to my dentist separately, and they were talking. So in the end, we're basically ending up running an ABB program for my dentist, and it's been really good. It's been really, really good. I mean, we've kind of not stopped. We're running courses, almost 2 courses a month that are full for the last year and a half, and this whole year we've got almost a couple of courses a month. So and again, it's been a bit of a hybrid of yes, they want, of course, they want their system to be taught as a brand, and it is taught as a brand. But as well as that, we're running our full kind of unfiltered IAS course, teaching all about occlusion and function and planning and space-wise and all that sort of stuff, and mentoring. And it has fitted. It seems to have fitted really well. So we've done that with ClearCorrect. Been doing that for a while, and now we've just started doing the same thing with SureSmile. Obviously, I've been using these products a lot in the background, so I've been trying out and using and testing these things out, and I'm seeing that all these things work really well. Actually, they work really, really well, and yeah, it seems to be a really good fit. I mean, it's nice that we are trusted by them. I suppose that's kind of the way. And part of it is also because I think there's a few DSOs, like these corporates who I think they just want to make sure that their dentists are educated and then have access to mentoring. That's kind of really part of the deal. They all come along and we teach ClearCorrect, and then when they do their first case, they have to post their case up, show us all the assessment photographs. We check their treatment setups, give them feedback, and then exactly like we've been doing with Inman, CSB, Clear Smile Aligner, we're checking every stage exactly the same way, and it seems to be working really, really well. We've been doing that for some time.
They want your website now. Where can they get the list of courses with the dates?
On the website, I mean, if you just click on iasortho.com, it should say courses, and then there'll be options for online and options for live, and live will all be there basically. Now the actual ClearCorrect courses, they are organised separately through the corporates that are running them, but we are actually also running 2 completely pure ClearCorrect courses that are being run by Straumann themselves. The dates are out, but the booking is not quite available yet. But those are going to be in April, and I think in June, something like that. I'm doing those myself, so they are there. And then Sure Smile, Dentsply Sirona. Again, if you look on their website, you'll probably find something about that as well. I mean, if you've got iOS from Dentsply Sirona, it's an absolutely natural fit. They've got beautiful workflow, works really, really well, and it's a great line. And actually, I'm doing Sure Smile on my wife right now, so it's working really well. So yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I would say iasortho.com is where to look, basically.
I know pre-COVID you were doing a lot of traveling, so on Facebook you were everywhere, all over the place. So now is that we talked at the beginning a little bit about, before we started, about a lot of these courses coming online. So how is that working now?
Yeah, it is good. I mean, that's kind of helped. I've had so many trips that have been cancelled and they've all been rescheduled, and I'm kind of slightly dreading about going traveling again now. But yeah, that'll come on. I'm sure some of them will end up being turned into online courses. Like actually, one of them, which is another ClearCorrect course for a Finnish dental corporate, was meant to be live at the end of August, but I'm doing that one completely online in about 2 weeks on a Saturday. So, but we send them out a kit, same thing. They watch a pre-recorded course, and then we have 4 hours together. So I suspect there will be, a fair element of that. And the good thing about that as well is that, it also just means it's more of us can do it. So Andy can do it, Daz can do it, some of the other guys can do it as well. So it's spread around a little bit. But I do kind of miss a bit of the traveling. Being at the days I was looking some back in my pictures, you sort of standing in front of an audience, Singapore, 1,000 people, or New Zealand, 300 people.
Wow.
Wow. And I haven't done that for quite a while. And but still, even a course of 16 to 24 people. Now, actually, they're all 16, of course. Mm-hmm. Even a course of 16 people, I still much prefer that than sitting.
Have you had any terrible experiences lecturing?
Yeah, probably. I think probably the first time I ever lectured in Denmark, and all I'll say is that I would think I was up way too late the night before, way too late, and it was the first time I've ever lectured there at a symposium, and I was not in a good state in the morning. I literally woke up half an hour before my lecture. And I jumped out of bed and I was literally just slapping my face repeatedly, and it was really unprofessional. Actually, I'm embarrassed about it. However, I got up on the stage and lectured, and by the first break, everybody in the room was saying, "How can we come on this course?" Literally,
well, it wasn't that bad then.
Good result.
It was actually the message. Even though I wasn't myself and I was very groggy and tired, I think the message came across, and that's how all these courses in Denmark sort of occurred from that day onwards, really. So yeah, I strongly recommend, if you're lecturing, go to bed early, and also don't run courses in Las Vegas, because they never work.
If you could go back, Tiff, and talk to yourself from you graduating from dental school, what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give to the dentists that are just graduating now listening to us? I know there's quite a number of people who are newly qualified and they're getting Instagram and all that sort of stuff. What advice would you be giving these people or yourself back then?
I would say don't rush. Don't rush, don't panic. Don't think just because you've not got a massive Instagram account and all the rest of it that somehow you're a failure. I'd also say, and I do say this a lot, so sorry to repeat myself, but try and stay in the same practice. Private dentistry, it's different. It's different now to what it used to be. The pathway for particularly of dentists of my age, and I think you guys a little bit 10 years behind me probably, but was that we were all NHS dentists in an NHS practice, and you converted your patients by talking to them. Mm-hmm. Now it seems to be, I can't be bothered talking to them, I'm just going to go and find myself a private practice. Okay. Yeah. And you know what? The people that did that 25 years ago, we laughed at them, because we thought, well, what communication skills have you developed? Where's your follow-up work? Have you actually seen your fillings 3 years later, 4 years later? Have you actually got the honest confidence to say to a patient, if I do it this way, it will be better, blah, 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 blah. So I think what I would say is that what we really should be getting back to doing is focusing on communicating with our patients. And I talk to NHS dentists and they say, oh, I ain't got time for that. I haven't got time for that. Do you know what? My practice was 100% NHS. 50% of them were exempt. And I made time. Yeah, it's a 50% exempt practice. This, this is not Windsor. It's not sort of some posh area of Cambridge or something. This is Sidcup. And I'm in the same practice and it's 100% private. And we still have a lot of those same patients. And I made time. And I made time by booking patients back in at lunchtime for a chat with them. At the end of the day, I'd be there from 5 to 6 o'clock, 6:30, just talking to them. So I did a checkup in 10, 15 minutes. And I say to them, come back at the end of the day and I'll sit and I'll show you what I mean. And then they had the treatment done. So sometimes you just got to work at it. I appreciate that, I think UDAs have made it much, much harder to break away, but it's still not impossible. I think that becoming private is a bit of a dark art now, but there is a way of doing it. And it's all about communication. It's all about visual communication and honesty and actually showing what you can do and also stuff you've done in the past as well.
So what mistakes do you think you made as a dentist, which we've
probably did too many veneers. I probably bought into cosmetic dentistry too easily. Having said that, I learned a huge amount from those initial cosmetic dentistry courses, learning how to just control a burr for a start, learning how to take an impression, learning about smile design, learning about photography. But then also just not understanding ortho. I prep patients' teeth that I look back and I'm embarrassed that I did it. But then actually you sort of learn from it as well. So I think it's, I wish I hadn't done quite as many veneers as I did. I didn't do that many, but I did quite a lot. And I look back at some of those and why did I do that? It was more me selling it. It was me showing them. It was digital imaging. Do you want to know, do you want to know how you could look style stuff? Okay. And I know that that's okay. But what I prefer now is I much prefer a patient say to me, like I said earlier, Tiff, do you remember that thing you were talking about? My front tooth moving out a bit. I can feel my lower one knocking against it. And the patient says, can we now do the align, bleach and bond? I much prefer them. I go, yes, rather than me say, this is how you could look. Because the whole, this is how you could look. In the patient's mind, you're still leading the conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, and okay, you're going to be doing that with new patients. And let's face it, new patients, we all want new patients. There's no doubt about it. And new patients often want aesthetics. But I think we hugely ignore a massive base of patients that are sat in our own chair. People who already love us, people who already trust us, people who we have not actually noticed their teeth changing because dentists don't take photographs regularly enough. Simple as that.
Yes.
No,
that's so true. I'm learning so much in this past hour. It's amazing. It's fantastic. We've got a couple of questions now. Do you recommend an online course or live in-person course? Will there be hands-on? So there's that classic question of.
Well, I mean, I'd actually say do both. If you've got the money, do both, because that's the best thing you can do. Because actually, you'll learn. And I'm not just saying that from a commercial aspect. We know that when people do online and live, they seem to do better. It's just you can see that it's very clear. But I would say, given the choice between the two, I say live. The great thing about online, of course, you can pause, rewind, go back and take your own time over it. But with our current online, so at the moment, if you do an online course, it's basically you watch it and that's it. But very soon we're going to have an online live component, rather like I'm doing for some of the ClearCorrect corporates, where like the Finnish people, where they watch a recorded version. We then have 4 hours of live lecture and online hands-on, and then we evaluate the models later. So that's going to be coming to our normal courses fairly soon.
Really good. Yeah, fantastic. We've got one more. I've done a few Invisalign Go cases, but would like to get more insight into GDP Ortho. What IAS course would you recommend, ABB or Ortho Restorative?
I'd actually say you're better off doing ABB, because I mean ABB is basically the day one kind of our version of occlusally focused ortho, and then day two ortho restorative. And I would say you're better off, if you can, it's better value to do them both together. We have a lot of people that have done Invisalign and they come on the day two ortho restorative, and then we're using some terminology that they don't know about, and then they end up coming on back on that one a bit later. So I'd say, budget's really, really tight, just do the ortho restorative. But if you can, I would suggest do both together. It's a better experience doing both together.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Got Nin commenting, making time for patients, explaining to them and telling with confidence is always a win. So communication, that's what it's all about. And that's a key skill, which unfortunately is not really taught so well at dental school, but it's always needs to be taught afterwards, I think.
I think it, I think the thing is, the weird thing was, it was once. And it kind of was once, and it was because we had, 1990 on the clinic, so 88 to 92, we had actually half of our tutors were private dentists, and they would come in and they would sit down and they'd pull these things out of their pockets called photographs that we'd never seen. And they would say, oh, look what I did, and look what I did. And we were like blown away by all this stuff. And actually that made us realize that it really, what we could do. But from my understanding is that a lot of these people are now not on these clinics, and that dental education has veered more towards producing NHS dentists. And I don't say that's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that's what's happened. And so I don't think that the younger dentists get quite the exposure to private dentistry the way they did. So they don't then see that pathway, and they think they just need to go on a facial aesthetics, Invisalign and composite course, and suddenly they're private dentists. No, you're not. You need it. 99% of it, as you guys are teaching very well, it's bloody communication. It's how you talk to people, and you're only going to be a better talker once you see your own work come back. And then you're not bullshitting someone, are you? When you know something works, you're then telling them the truth.
It's an interesting one. With COVID and restrictions when generating AGP, how do you take photos? How do you sanitize the camera and lenses?
It's a very good question. And I would have to say I've probably taken less photos this year than I have in my whole career, because it's a massive, massive pain. So changing gloves very regularly, basically taking the glove. I just take the gloves off now, and I just hold my camera, but very simply. We've got plastic wrap or whatever else we need to do if I'm worried or whatever. But ultimately, I end up holding the camera with my hands, having washed them, and take my photographs. I don't touch the retractors or anything like that at all. So I actually just get the patients to put them in themselves, actually, or the nurses put them in. And I have to say, I must have, I do hold the mirror actually, but that pretty much that's it. So
are you busier just now in this COVID season than you were beforehand because of obviously the lack of access to dentistry?
Well, we're not running all of our surgery, so we're running 3 out of 4, and that's just to give us, just in case you've got to do an AGP or something, then you could dive into another room. So that's quite nice because we've got 4 surgeries. But I have to say, we've never been busier in our whole 20 years we've been there. It's been absolutely bonkers busy, and it's amazing the kind of treatments people want. I thought when we all went back that people would just not be wanting to spend any money and just just fix this at a minimal cost. But as I said, we're not in a rich area, but a lot of people seem to have a lot of money now. Whether that comes because they're not spending it on holidays, furlough money.
Free money, furlough. I think it's free money, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but it's people certainly haven't lost confidence in going to the dentist. So we're hugely busy, and of course, not every NHS practice is able to run, understandably at full whack. So there's a lot of patients who just need stuff done, and they go to private practices to do it, basically. So which does seem a bit of a shame, but I'm guessing you guys have been swept off your feet as well.
Exactly the same. Super busy. It's never been this busy. I think a lot of people, they want to get the treatment done. They're spending more time on Zoom calls, so they want to get the teeth sorted. They've got extra money, like we said. They haven't gone on holiday. They're getting furlough money. They've been spending more time online, so they're seeing all of that marketing now. They're coming in. So all of those reasons that we've talked about all of the time, and that's the simple reason why we're so busy.
Yeah.
It really has been amazing, Tiff.
I can't believe that's an hour either. I love that.
I know. It's like we haven't lost a single attendee. I don't think that's ever happened. They've all been like glued. That's fantastic. But thank you so much for coming. and sort of telling us all of this, so much knowledge there, and taking the hour out. And thank you to all the attendees as well that have taken the hour out of their evenings. Just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. It's going to be the end of 2020. Hopefully 2021 is going to be a lot better. And so look forward to seeing you guys in the new year. Grant, you want to say?
That was really, lovely to have you for the hour, and I have such respect for yourself and what you've built, and the amount of grey hairs. Well, I can't see any. You must have developed building that empire you are, and a huge respect to you for that. And you've helped me out massively, your business and your empire. Just a massive thank you from me too. And it's been lovely speaking to you tonight. Again, it's always a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks you guys for having me, and I always laugh when you call it an empire. It certainly doesn't feel like an empire. It's like it's quite broad, but I think my kids will probably be well off, but I would have kicked the bucket probably. but no, it's been a pleasure, and I really do enjoy this, and thanks very much for having me, and Happy New Year to you guys as well.
Bless you. Great stuff.
Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate your time and for listening. Take care. Bye bye now.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.